Hello and welcome back to match 3 in my first Hour of Devastation on Amonkhet draft. This is HHA 21 over at puremtgo.com. And with that, let's get rolling. So I won the die roll, and I, of course, will play first. And this hand is perfectly fine, as it has some early work and cycling if necessary, as well as land. So there's nothing really wrong with it. And unfortunately, I'm a little bit behind my opponent on that play. They luckily got to get their Spellweaver Eternal down on turn 1. Sorry about the pronunciation issues. And then, of course, they play the Eternal of Harsh Truce, which is a very strong card. Luckily, the Spellweaver isn't a zombie randomly, so it allows this to block. But then my opponent goes and plays Kefnet the Mindful, which means I get to fight another god. I've never actually fought against the blue god in Limited, so I was kind of curious to see how it would go. It does seem a bit difficult to work well, as in Limited, having a handful of 7 cards might mean your board isn't that good, and that can be problematic. And so here, my only real choice is to just try and push some damage. I was willing to trade the Bone Slasher for the Eternal of Harsh Truths, because I don't need him drawing extra cards when he has a Kefnet on the battlefield already. And here he just draws a card and returns a land so we can get the 7, and then he can attack with his Kefnet. And here I just attack in. At this point, I think my best chance is to race. And I cycle in hoping of getting one of my mini removal spells that could handle Kefnet. But I don't, so I just drop down the Aerial Guide. And my opponent cycles as well. And even if I had wanted to block, my opponent kills my blocker, which also triggers Prowess. Unfortunately, I draw more land. And at this point, I have no choice but to lead back this Shimmerscale Drake as I'm at 5 life. So it all depends on this next draw, which unfortunately is land, so I have to concede. Hope you will join me in Game 2 here shortly. Alright, and we're back for Game 2. And this is not necessarily the most exciting opening hand. I do have a chance of maybe eating one of his creatures. And I have some cycling to dig if I need a little bit. Unfortunately, I didn't draw any ways to deal with Kefnet. My deck has several, so I'm not terribly concerned as long as I just make sure to keep a hold of one when it comes time. And I just start the cycling earlier. He has some removal, so I figure I'd rather get to the point that I can play the River Winder than being concerned with the River Serpent, especially since I don't have enough cycling to guarantee the Serpent can attack. However, this game I get to start off with the aggressive start of the Spellweaver Eternal, which also lets me just get off to a very quick start, as I get to go 2-drop into 3 and 4. Then my opponent, however, plays the Ammon Eternal, which is not promising for me. For those unaware, this card is very, very good. I was glad I didn't see it first game. My opponent decides he doesn't want to trade it for one of his cards. I draw a cartouche, put it on my Merciless Eternal, and with my Prowess trigger, I decide to attack. Of course, my opponent does not want to trade either of those creatures. With that, Torment of Vision, I could have pumped it so it would have a turn and discarded a land, but there's really no gain in that, so I just let it die. And then I discarded an island to its secondary ability. I'm actually a little bit surprised my opponent attacks here because I will snap block the Ammon Eternal. And here I can just go ahead and play out my Punisher, and I'm fine just taking the damage. My opponent then, in case you didn't quite see it, he played Rags to Riches, so he wrathed the board, and he also will eventually be able to take control of my creature. He's still several mana away from it, so I'm not concerned about him being able to do it anytime soon. And hopefully by then I will have a selection of creatures. My opponent does play the Aerial Guide, so I do not drop my Reed Stalker, which I could have to get more damage, as I can effectively use the Reed Stalker as removal here, which is exactly what I end up doing. And I don't think my opponent was prepared for it at all, which is, again, one of the reasons I think this card is actually quite good early on in the format when people forget it exists. And I'm fine just attacking there. My opponent moves to Cartouche of Knowledge. I would much rather save the final reward for Kefnet if she shows up, but I also don't want him drawing cards, as I feel like at this point I can press my advantage, hopefully. And now I also have the luxury of being able to counter something or dig, and he does play something that I can counter. I am quite happy to be able to counter a 4/4 flyer at that point. And again, that was a card my opponent didn't see, so very nice for him to just play right into it like that. And this is actually, I think, one of the only times I play this throughout the matches. My opponent played Wander in Death to get back Ammon Eternal, and unfortunately I did not remember the other card he got back. However, I basically have to immediately kill the Ammon Eternal. I could have arguably waited, but I was able to get him 4 more damage that way with my opponent down to 2. And then my opponent here played Lily on his defeat to kill my Lurching Rot Beast. And then, luckily, I have enough mana to get 2 creatures and activate the ability of the Bowman Punisher again. So when my opponent played this, I'm not that upset about it, mainly because now at least if he does end up playing Rags or plays Riches, I can just give him a creature that doesn't untap. And I force him to jump block here. He plays his own big creature, and unfortunately I have nothing to do for that one. I'm a little bit surprised he attacks here, because I would just need a removal spell on his next creature, but his next creature happens to be a copy of the Riverwinder. Luckily I draw a flyer, and he attacks with both. So I have to block here with 1. I am technically risking dying by not blocking with my Aerial Guide, but that's also my really only chance of winning. And my opponent here, of course, tries to get me to lose the game by giving him my Aerial Guide, which I was not interested in doing. And so that is game 2. And now on to game 3. Alright, welcome for game 3 here. This hand is perfectly serviceable. I'm hoping that he doesn't have Kefnet on turn 3 so that I can attempt to counter it, as that is one way to deal with the gods. Luckily my opponent mulls down to 6, and we're off to the races. Unfortunately, my opponent did have the ability to play Kefnet on turn 3, which really hammers me down. I decide that I want to leave up mana as opposed to playing the Bone Slasher, so that I can counter something that he plays, or dig for an answer for Kefnet. And here I dig. I essentially take the Riverwinder because it cycles. And here I just continue my digging. I play Tragic Lesson. Not drawing anything I'm particularly happy about, so I just get rid of the Rot Beast. I did get the final reward though, so if I get a 5th land, I can activate and kill Kefnet finally. My opponent's been stuck on 3 lands, which is helpful. However, they did reach 7 mana, so they get to hit me once with it. Instead of giving them a chance to do anything, draw another card, I take this opportunity to get rid of Kefnet right now. And so here my basic plan is I've reached 7 mana, so I might as well make a giant hexproof flyer and hope that carries the day for me. And luckily the cartouche draws me another card that lets me play more, and so I'm actually able to play another creature as well. I go ahead and attack because I'm okay getting attacked down to 6, or down to 5, excuse me, because I think it still puts me ahead because I can attack it back. And very luckily I draw the Punisher. I did tap my mana incorrectly. I could have tapped 3 swamps and then also use Hour of Eternity. I'm okay having not, though, because it does give me the option of doing it twice. I decided to not attack, however, as I'm just a little worried that my opponent might be able to squeeze out the extra damage to get me killed. And so here I just, yet again, get to use Hour of Eternity to get back the Banewhip Punisher. And in this case, I'm actually going to keep the Punisher around itself by using its -1/-1 counter just to kill a 1 toughness creature, which does give me the opportunity to attack. I'm actually able to use the Liliana's Defeat to kill the Cradle token, which puts my opponent in a position where they have to chump block, or they have to block this, and they have to block one of these 2. And then since I'm able to play another flyer afterwards, they can't even sneak in for the damage, so they concede. Well, thank you for joining me for the drafts, and I hope to see you next time.